Bienvenue à la session scientifique du Département de médecine familiale de l'Université d'Ottawa. La session se veut bilingue. Vous êtes invité à poser vos questions dans la langue de votre choix. Bonne session. Cette présentation sera enregistrée et disponible sur la chaîne YouTube du Département de médecine familiale. En poursuivant la session, vous consentez à être enregistré si votre caméra ou microphone est activé. This session is being recorded and will be posted on the Department of Family Medicine YouTube channel. By continuing the session, you are consenting to be recorded if your camera or microphone is activated. Nous sommes réunis aujourd'hui à partir de nombreux endroits différents et dans un espace virtuel. Mais nous désirons commencer par reconnaître les terres sur lesquelles se trouve le département de médecine familiale de l'Université d'Ottawa, qui font partie du territoire traditionnel non cédé du peuple Anishinaabe algonquin. Nous vous invitons à réfléchir à votre propre emplacement au Canada par rapport au territoire où vous vous trouvez aujourd'hui. Nous reconnaissons aussi les gardiens des savoirs traditionnels, jeunes et âgés. Nous honorons leurs courageux dirigeants d'hier, d'aujourd'hui et de demain.
Nimanajiananig, mamiwinini anishnabeg, ogo ka nagadawabandajig, iyo aki ekoweshkad, akonongum egawikad ki migiwewaj. Nimanajiananig kakina anishnabeg undaje kaye ogog kakina eniagizijig, enikukamigak kanadang eje udapinagig endawajin udawang.
We are gathered today from many different locations and in a virtual space, but we wish to begin by recognizing the land on which the Department of Family Medicine at the University of Ottawa is located, which is part of the traditional unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin people. We invite you to think about your own location in Canada in relation to the territory where you find yourself today. We also acknowledge the traditional knowledge keepers, both young and old, and we honor their courageous leaders, past, present, and future.
Bienvenue, bonjour, welcome, and hello, everybody. Great to see you all joining online. Welcome to Grand Rounds, our May edition. My name is Doug Archibald. I'm the Director of Research for the Department of Family Medicine, and I will be today's moderator. Today we have two great presentations by three presenters. I'm going to introduce all three of them. Our first presenters will be Dr. Laura Visentin and Dr. Taunia Rifai, and then they'll be followed by Dr. Patricia Houston. First, Dr. Visentin is a family physician. She holds a Master's of Science degree in epidemiology and has over a decade of experience as a clinician. Her work spans community-based and academic family practice, palliative care, and care in the retirement home and long-term care facilities. She has research interests in dementia and also in planetary health and how the protection of the environment can be integrated into the skill set of future family physicians. Taunia Rifai is a family physician with the Ottawa Hospital Academic Family Health Team, a civic site where she is currently the unit director. She obtained her medical degree at McGill and has completed her residency training at the Maine Dartmouth Family Medicine Residency Program. She has many interests, including reproductive health, office-based procedures, gender-affirming care, and planetary health. Then their next presentation will be by Dr. Patricia Houston, family and public health physician, studied anthropology at McGill and medicine at the University of Calgary, and then finally public health at Harvard. She's the climate change preparedness champion and researcher at the U-Ottawa Family Department of Medicine. She's interested in sustainable healthcare, planetary health, climate change preparedness for primary care. She's part of the Planetary Health Working Party at WONCA and a member of the Strategic Advisory Group on Climate Change for the Pan American Health Organization. So with that, Laura and Taunia, you're up.
We're good?
You're good.
Okay, all right, I'll start. So I'm just gonna, there we go. I'm gonna skip to our objectives. So when we were asked to talk at Grand Rounds, this was in the fall, we were, thinking along the lines of just, generally talking about our initiatives in planetary health and ways to incorporate this in learning. Since then, we actually were lucky enough to receive a seed fund grant from the Department of Family Practice at the Ottawa Hospital. So thank you, Department of Family Practice, for that. So we thought that maybe we would talk a little bit more about that initiative. And then we decided to invite a special guest to talk with us. That's Dr. Laura Cummings. And I realized I didn't tell you guys that she was going to join us, so she didn't get a full introduction. But Dr. Cummings is also one of the physicians at the Ottawa Hospital Academic Family Health Team, and she is a brilliant QI methodologist. So she's going to talk a little bit about that portion. So why do we need to include this? I think we all know why planetary health and talking about planetary health is important. So if you've been to any of other presentations by Dr. Rifai or me, then we've already talked about that. But why should we incorporate it into the curriculum? Residents do want to know about this. So through the CFPC, their annual guide for improving family medicine training in 2020 was on planetary health. The Association of Faculties of Medicine of Canada Declaration on Planetary Health in 2022, University of Ottawa was a signatory, and this was calling for immediate action on integrating planetary health education into curriculum. So there have been some studies that have examined residents' level of knowledge and confidence, and staff and residents both consistently recognize the importance of planetary health, but a lot of times lack the knowledge and confidence to put it into practice. There are some studies that also did an educational intervention. Usually it's kind of like a one-time intervention, and they did see improved knowledge and confidence. I just also want to point out that primary care in general should play a big role in sustainable healthcare systems just because of our sheer numbers and our ability to advocate. So the curriculum committee is really this informal committee that started up after the 2023 annual retreat. There was a bunch of us like-minded faculty members that came together to just talk about planetary health and explore how we could give more exposure to residents on this topic. We thought maybe we should have some kind of like formal mandate. So we kind of grabbed the mandate from the article in 2024 that was written by Dr. Hussein Malou in the Lancet, and also some of the other faculty members here. And so we kind of just rejigged it a little bit to be a bit more family medicine focused. So really just looking to incorporate best practices for content when it comes to curriculum, engage with trainees, faculty members, and also a larger planetary health council, being at the Department of Family Medicine and also at the Faculty of Medicine, and looking for ways to promote scholarly activity. So in the literature, folks that are doing some planetary health curriculum work definitely advocate for a longitudinal strategy in incorporating planetary health knowledge, so concepts that are repeated over time. The second kind of aspect or the second kind of concept would be an integrated curriculum, where really we're talking about planetary health when we talk about all kinds of different topics when it comes to climate change and planetary health. So for instance, discussing climate events and preparedness when we're talking about geriatric focused topics. Really trying to enhance scholarly activity, so encouraging QI projects that have to do with planetary health and sustainability, and some might argue that actually every quality improvement project that we get residents to do should have a sustainability lens. And finally, just looking towards interdisciplinary and interprofessional work. So involving maybe cross-pollinating with Indigenous knowledge, involving allied health, like pharmacists who can help us with deprescribing and so on. So finally, just to get to the seed fund grant, I'm not going to go through this whole like all the words on this slide, but this is a QI project, and really, again, just looking at improving family medicine residents' knowledge of planetary health concepts. So I'll get Dr. Cummings to talk more about the methodology piece.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Laura. So I'll maybe cue you to move things forward as I go through. So thanks so much for having me. I just wanted to introduce a little bit about, our approach, our methods, our framework that we're going to use to make this a systemic QI project. So we've used the quality improvement framework from the Ottawa Hospital, which is called the TOH Innovation Framework. I've just put it here as kind of a broad strokes picture. So it's a 5-step process. It's based very much around other frameworks, such as the IHI model for improvement. And so right now we're working through steps 1 to 3, primarily focusing on 1 and 2, and then we're starting to dabble into shaping what our trial improvement intervention will be. So next slide. Moving.
Hang on, sorry.
It's okay, you got this.
There we go.
Excellent, thank you so much. So as Laura V was saying so nicely, we do have evidence from the literature, and also just a shout out to Zach Van Allen, who's helped us very much with a literature review, looking into this topic and seeing what are the gaps that are out there. So we know from the literature that when we look in Canada and internationally, there is a gap. Residents and other medical trainees and faculty and staff report low levels of knowledge and of planetary health concepts and confidence when it comes to engaging in counseling with patients, quality improvement initiatives, and participating in advocacy related to sustainability. And so we have a gap, we have a problem. We have an aim, so that is our aim statement, which is shown on the right-hand side. And that aim statement, we're hoping to make this a very thoughtful aim statement, one that is reasonable but also ambitious. So our aim is to increase family medicine residents' self-reported knowledge of and confidence in engaging in planetary health initiatives by X% over the course of 6 months. And the reason why this is not defined yet is because we don't yet have our baseline audit, which is going to be done through surveys of our learners to know where their baseline knowledge and confidence scores are. So in order to be thoughtful about this and make it a reasonable level of improvement, we've left this open until we've done that baseline audit. We've chosen a time frame of approximately 6 months because this is a pilot project. It's small scale. We're doing a small PDSA, and the whole purpose is to be very iterative and to use feedback to make it better over time. Next slide. Excellent. There you go. Great. So I just want to talk a little bit about our measures. So similar to our aim statement, we wanted to be very objective and systemic when it comes to making our measures. So we've done a root cause analysis that is in part through the literature review that Zach has been helping us with, and then also will be founded in our resident surveys, where we're planning to use a Likert scale to assess measures of confidence and knowledge in planetary health concepts. And then our change idea, in this case, we selected to do a curriculum design. And that was because we know that this is a low-hanging fruit. Like, we know that we don't have a curriculum. And so it's very apparent that that is a very reasonable intervention for us to design. And we're hoping to make this both didactic and experiential through QI opportunities, building on what we already have. Residents already have to do QI projects as part of their learning, and also will have to do this in their future practice. So it fits quite nicely. And as Laura was saying, every QI project in some way should have a planetary health lens when we think about it in the broader context. So our 3 types of measures when we look at QI projects are always going to be our outcome, our process, and our balancing. So our outcome is going to be our main objective, and that is to change the self-reported knowledge and confidence scores of our learners. That will be based on a pre and post Likert scale. the process, so looking at the steps along the way, so we can figure out if things don't go according to plan, where was the gap? Where do we need to refine things for that next PDSA cycle? So we're going to be looking at the number of teaching sessions that we have that have a planetary health focus. We're going to be looking at resident attendance and completion of any modules that we create. And then also looking at the number of resident-led planetary health QI and FMRSP projects. And then the last type of measure that we're going to be looking at is a balancing measure. And so we want to see when we change this in the system, when we integrate this, are we having any unanticipated consequences that may make this more difficult to lead a sustainable change in the curriculum, and something that we should pilot and expand to other sites. So we're going to be looking at resident satisfaction scores and also the time that we've needed to invest in this, because that will be very important for other sites to recognize what time will be required, and also the time required from the residents for their learning. Excellent. So I think that is kind of my QI piece. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand it over to Taunia now.
Thank you. So this is just, I'm going to present some of the ideas in terms of that step 3 of what our actions might look like. So one of the ideas that we have is making QI projects for residents sort of easy and attainable and interesting. And so part of what I'm working on right now is sort of setting up the project charter, basically, for some ideas regarding planetary health, so that they can just say, oh, that's kind of interesting, and here are some resources that I can use to do this. It seems pretty straightforward. I'll take that one. Thank you very much. So some of these are ideas, so would be relating to like transit to and from clinics and how patients are doing that, and whether there could be interventions to improve use of public transit in urban clinics. Plastic versus metal speculae. The other idea would be so MDI prescriptions, which I think I've talked about enough at other presentations. Increasing education about plant-based diets. So we talk about diet with patients all the time, and trying to weave it into our education with patients. And then frequency and efficacy of social prescriptions, including just getting exercise or joining groups, but also there's the formal parks RX ideas as well. Can you go to the next slide, please? Mm-hmm. Thank you. And the other piece of like what we're actively doing with this project is we're building alliances and getting our foot in the door with a lot of groups that already are doing such great work. So obviously Trish Houston is going to talk about the DFM Planetary Network. And so we are very active in that group, and we hope to continue to do so and keep voicing curriculum needs. The Faculty of Medicine has a Planetary Health Council or committee led by Hussein Malou. And so we're trying to get that group more attached with family medicine, as we are the largest department. We want to have more outreach to community family physicians, because they know they're the feet on the ground probably more than us academic physicians. And so we need to understand what the landscape looks like and what's feasible and what's not feasible in the sort of quote real world. Learn from and with Indigenous leaders. So partnerships are being built there. There's CAPE. So CAPE, we're pretty vocal at CAPE, and we're going to keep they have great resources, and we're just going to keep using those resources as well, and trying to get more vocal about education. So McMaster University also has great initiatives, and I'll sort of show one after this. So they've already put in a ton of work. They have got great resources and websites. And so we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We just want to sort of share the wealth. And then actually, this is kind of interesting. I think it was Laura Cummings who met Barry Bruce at the recent retreat. And so this is why the retreat is such a great opportunity to meet colleagues who are already working on things that you're interested in. So he has pointed us in the direction of a QI initiative from the University of Toronto that's called Growing Sustainable Physicians. And so they've got a whole website dedicated to QI projects for residents. They have annual like educational sessions for residents about QI relating to planetary health. So again, trying not to reinvent the wheel, but connect the dots. And next slide, please. So from McMaster, this is Peach, which a lot of people who are interested in this work already know about, but this is exactly what we've been referring to in terms of the low-hanging fruit. It's just a visual diagram of that, and then the different color peaches sort of tell you how intense the change may be. So low-hanging fruit, choosing wisely. So choosing wisely because they are guidelines that are available to us pretty easily. Deprescribing would be a huge, quote, game changer in terms of carbon emissions, and it's a pretty low-hanging fruit because it's something we do every day. And then higher up, you've got a new net zero building, which is my wish, but we'll see if we get there. So again, this is just a nice framework of sort of what is already out there. And I think by us starting with like QI projects that are planetary health and sustainability focused, we are reaching for the low-hanging fruit because residents already have to do a QI project. We're just going to make it easier and more appealing to do it in a sustainable way. Next slide. So other ideas in terms of activities for our group. Advocacy teaching. So that's something that I don't think we have any expertise yet in, but I think that the faculty could get more training in advocacy work and in teaching advocacy work as a result. And then we have to learn from our partners. So I don't know if Eugenie is here, but I sort of told her I was going to brag about her a little bit. So Eugenie Waters, who was at the retreat at our panel discussion, she's she's a leader in advocacy in family medicine. So she's constantly writing op-eds. She is at municipal committee meetings. She's very, very vocal about planetary health work, and she's published at least 2 times that I can find in the Canadian Family Physician on planetary health topics. She gets a lot of, she's on social media, she's getting lots of comments, lots of discussion going on social media. So she's kind of my idol when it comes to advocacy, and I think we should really tap into her skill set. And then just for fun, other things that we have done and that we'll continue to do, we had like a movie viewing for basically community members at the Ottawa Hospital on a planetary health related movie from CAPE, and it was called Plastic People. This is just as people were trickling in. We had many more people than this in the theater, but that's just a photo that I had. And then on the right, you've got, again, the Ottawa Hospital focused, but these are ideas that we could expand beyond the Ottawa Hospital, a community bike ride. So just more ideas that we've got going on.
Okay, I think this is our last slide. And so just if you're wondering how you can contribute, I mean, just the obvious things like, openness to learn, and maybe there are some behaviors that can be changed working in the office and working with learners, talking about this with learners and patients, of course, too. Advocating locally as you are comfortable doing. And if you have a learner that's interested, then please connect them with us if you're not sure what direction to go in. If they have ideas about a QI project or FMRSP or just general questions. And also if you want to have more information about what to say about different topics, again, as was mentioned before, like we're not reinventing the wheel here. There's just so much information already out there, so many resources. It's really just kind of finding the right ones that fit your needs. And that's it.
Laura, Taunia, and Laura, thank you so much. Great presentation. I'll start things off just with a comment, especially what you started with, Taunia, around making QI easy. You're well on your way, all of you. Number one, it starts with passion, right? It's visible that the 3 of you are extremely passionate about this thematic area. That's going to rub off on residents. You've got lots of resources to provide them, to sort of generate, that sort of that critical thinking, things that you want to change, you want to investigate. So congratulations. Wow, it's really great to see. I think you've got a great template here.
Thank you. Yeah,
So,
There are a lot of resources. I was just going to say there are a lot of resources, and it can be a bit overwhelming sometimes to kind of sort through things. And we still feel that way. And I think it's still going to take some time to see what's going to be the most relevant and helpful moving forward.
Morning. Sorry, I can't be on camera. Really nice overview, and I'm super impressed. I've been watching you journey along, and it's really, as Doug said, just I want to congratulate you for all the work. So I'm going to give you some ideas to make more work. So totally, this should be shared. So I was like, oh, okay, well, you should write a commentary just related to the, there was one slide where you looked at the curriculum piece and there's a gap in curriculum. So to me, right away, you could do a commentary about, you know, this gap and the need to essentially do the kind of work that you're now embarking upon from a family medicine perspective, completely publishable. They're fairly quick to put together in a sense, you know, maybe a summer student would like to volunteer with you, just planting that seed. And then the second thing is that in terms of just, you've already done a proposal, you got a small grant. That means, again, in terms of that, you have some things written. And I would be encouraging you, as you're doing your needs assessment, to be thinking, well, this one also should be published, because I bet you that 17 other or 16 other departments of family medicine in Canada have exactly the same gap, and that there are groups of people who are thinking the same thing. Not only that, but globally as well. So, you know, take your ideas, the small pieces that you do, and as you're putting it together, think about how you can share it in that way, and it will create, I think, a lot of momentum. And then the third piece on that is that, you know, again, might want to think about, again, with this collective, and I saw the talk that the panel at Montebello, is that, you know, Department of Family Medicine, Ottawa, and with the Faculty of Medicine, very in a right position, again, to sort of create your own network and be thinking about being national leaders to push this work ahead. So just a few ideas. Keep going. Thank you.
Thank you. I've written them all down.
Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Really interesting work. I like the idea of involving the team. I think that the pharmacist, you know, and maybe the School of Pharmacy could be involved as well. It just seems like this could be a box on the pharmacist consultation. And I think patients would be engaged as well. They don't like to take all the medicines that they're on, but they don't really know why they're taking them all. And sometimes a review by the pharmacist about which ones could be discontinued. And there's a huge amount of trust with the pharmacist. So I really like the peach tree. It's helping me sort of understand where to start, because you can get sort of overwhelmed with this. So just picking something, as you say, it was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cynthia, go ahead.
Hi, sorry. I just wanted to, I was just wondering if you guys have already connected to some of the pharmacists in the area who are already working on planetary health. There's a few. So I could definitely connect you to those guys, if that would be helpful.
Yes, Cynthia, you talking to you and setting up a meeting has been on my to-do list for a while now.
Okay, will do then.
Yes.
Well, okay, thank you very much. If people have further comments that come to mind, just put them in the chat. I'll now turn things over to Trish, and she'll give us her second presentation today.
Hello, everybody. Do you see that?
Just fine. Yep.
Okay, great. Well, I'm happy to be here today, and nice to see everybody here. My thanks to the organizing committee and for this venue. I see the Family Medicine Grand Rounds as a kind of greenhouse for ideas. And we just witnessed that with the last presentation, so it was great. I have no conflicts of interest to declare. I've simplified my educational objectives just because as I went into this, it became so large. I realized, you could actually put together a graduate course on planetary health. So I boiled it down to what I want to do today is to give you a situational update on where we are globally, nationally, and locally on climate change. Identify why the growing interest in planetary health, summarize some practical actions, and highlight some new strategies. So where are we globally? And, unfortunately, I'm going to be starting with the bad news, but then it will be good news from there on in. So I showed this at the faculty retreat that we have breached the 1.5 degrees Celsius increase compared to pre-industrial average. That is not only a breach of our Paris Accord, but it is also a potential tipping point where we are at increased risk for more disruptions in the climate. If we look nationally in Canada, this is from the Insurance Bureau of Canada looking at claims for extreme weather events. And so July 24, we hope this is going to be a blip on the screen and that the numbers will come down. But this was actually only for July, and for the other years, it's for July and August. So they concluded that there are increase in number and severity of these events that are starting to be a threat to people and property. So are we approaching our 2030 goals for greenhouse gases and emissions? And if you'd asked me a couple of years ago, I would have said, yeah, we're probably in the, we're probably getting there slowly. We're not quite there, but we're getting there. But actually, we're not. You might not even see where the 2030 target is. It's this white broken line here. But very little progress. And in fact, the red histogram bars at the bottom are oil and gas, and they've had generally an increase. So where do we rank with other countries? I would have thought, again, we'd be over here somewhere, but in fact, we are 62 out of 67. We're actually worse than Kazakhstan, and just slightly ahead of Korea and Russia. Now, Ottawa Public Health has stated that climate change is happening in Ottawa. We do have increasing levels of air pollution that have been linked to morbidity and premature death. We've had ice storms, flooding, tornadoes, heat wave, a derecho that killed 10 people a couple of years ago, and the high particulate matter in the air from being downwind from fires. So why the growing interest in planetary health? First, we'll just do some definitions that climate change preparedness is really focused on current and near future threats. And so this picture here is what the air quality was like in 22 when we were downwind from those fires. And initially the scale was from 1 to 10 and our number was 11. They had to change the scale after that event. In contrast, planetary health focuses on a preferred future. And Wonka, World Family Physician, has recently offered this definition of healthy people and healthy communities on a healthy planet. So looking at what could be. It's broader than climate change preparedness in that it includes the issue of environmental degradation on the planet. Now, I would say a focus solely on climate change has not been too successful for a number of reasons. First, it can be demotivating. It's sort of like saying, hey, let's try and forestall Armageddon together, And it does not highlight the related issues of air pollution, environmental degradation, and mass migrations and social inequities, when in fact all of these issues and climate change have a common root cause. And there is a tendency, if you're just looking at climate change, to simplify both the problem as oil companies and the solution as green energy. So I'm not saying that oil companies can't be problematic. I'm just saying that the problem and the solutions can be much broader than that. And as a result, the update on climate change preparedness and just climate change action, as the emission histogram has shown, has been slow. Now, like I said, there's so much to cover in the area of planetary health. There's a number of books that have been written, but I want to tell you this story of 2 books, because I think it illustrates some important things about the heart of planetary health. So in 1972, this book, Limits of Growth, was published by a team of researchers at MIT, and they had developed a computer model called World 3. They wanted to study what were the consequences of continued population growth, industrialization, and resource depletion. So they developed this model, they inputted data on what we had, and they concluded that if continued unchecked growth could lead to environmental and economic collapse. Now, around 30 years later, around 2000, someone had the bright idea to repeat the study. They said, look, they did all these projections. Let's see if they've turned out to be correct to date. And so they did it 30 years later, and it actually mapped out very well. So it has now been retested multiple times. This one is the most recent one, and it shows the same overshoot and eventually collapse, and estimated to be coming in the next decade. So now, what happened with Earth for All, they said, okay, well, let's take a real look at this and really try different scenarios. So a team of experts was assembled, including at least one of the original researchers from Limits to Growth, and they updated the World 3 model because, modeling has changed so much in the last 50 years. It's much more sophisticated. And they again tried multiple scenarios. And for the similar scenarios to Limits to Growth, they had the same findings. But there was one scenario that concluded that it was possible to avoid environmental and economic collapse and maintain human and planetary health. So, phew, there could be a way out of this. And some of the seminal work that laid behind this was done by a woman, Kate Raworth, who is an economist from Oxford. And she developed this concept of the green zone, where we can live safely within our planetary boundaries and maintain our social foundation. So on the top are things like climate change, acidification of the oceans, the ozone layer, air pollution, and so on. And then the social foundation are basically the social determinants of health. We need food, we need water, we need health, education, income, peace, justice, and so on. So in the ideal world, we're in the green zone. But then they said, okay, well, let's see, if we can quantify where we are on each of these areas. And what they found was, well, we're not doing so well. We've breached, here it shows 4. There was an article that came out last week saying we've now breached 6 of the 9 parts of the ecological ceiling. And this is globally, but we have actually breached every single one of the social determinants of health. So we're not in the green zone completely yet. Now, the scenario that they looked at had these 5 transformational policies: rapid renewable energy growth, sustainable food production, abolish poverty, achieve equity, and then the big one is transforming the economic operating system from winner takes all to an earth for all economy. Johan Rockstrom, he's been working in this area for 20 years. This is from a TED talk, and he was showing how you could input the different scenarios and see how they would come out. But he concluded that the earth is still resilient, that it is possible to reach health and planetary health. So I just wanted to go back to this planetary health poster from Wonka and just connect it to these modeling studies, which are basically based on complexity theory. It's based on understanding the network of interacting influences between people, communities, and the planet. And actually, what the poster talks about is each of these three levels are like ecosystems. So the human body is an ecosystem, our community is an ecosystem, the planet. And there are interactions of certain factors in health that we all realize that are working at a horizontal level to make up our health, but there are also vertical influences. So if you live in an unhealthy community, that affects your health. If you live on an unhealthy planet, that affects your health. But the good news is understanding these influences and interactions also point to ways that we can intervene in positive ways. So I'm going to talk about a couple and then talk about the implications for family physicians. Now, the health co-benefits, this is another tree, but this was actually just published. It's a primary care fruit tree. And instead of looking at cost in terms of money, this is looking at cost to implement in terms of time, in terms of hours per year. So the fruits are slightly different, but the orange fruits are the game changers. So if you do this, over 3 tons of carbon equivalents can be saved per year. So this is if you improve health, you can have a great effect on the planet. And so there are these 4 oranges, advanced care planning for the last years of life, because if people don't want aggressive care, saving them from emergent hospitalizations helps them and saves an enormous amount of energy. The plant-rich eating, deprescribing, and again, the famous asthma puffers. Now, the good news is patients like the idea of health co-benefits. They're also called double wins. And so patients will come and they'll say, hey, I saw your poster on the wall. Please change my inhaler. I want to help the planet too. It's an extra added incentive. Now, there was an editorial that came out just last week in Lancet Public Health that said, okay, we've been talking about, good for the health, good for the planet, but it works the other way around. And we should really be measuring, if we can decrease greenhouse gas emissions, we should be measuring the health co-benefits of that. So what is its effect on, exacerbations of COPD that have been avoided, improvements to the environment, the economy, and of course, equity. Now, the second thing I want to tell you about that arises because of an understanding of how everything is interrelated is something called tipping points that can scale up. So these are interventions that generally resonate for a lot of people that can have an accelerated impact when there's networked action. And so Courtney Howard, many of you know her, she is a family physician and was the president of CAPE for a long time. She kind of designed this to illustrate how this works. And an example you could use is deciding not to invest in oil and gas companies. So one person, is saying, hey, I just can't do this. I'm not going to do it. But then she talks with other people and they say, hey, maybe we could do something about this. And so, in fact, at the University of Ottawa, there is a policy that the University of Ottawa will not invest in oil and gas companies. And then you talk about it with other people, and it turns out that now at MD Management, which is with the Canadian Medical Association, they have mutual funds that do not include oil and gas companies. And so, all of a sudden, it sort of becomes a movement, and it can change the social norm. And they've actually done modeling studies to show that this is a very effective strategy. So one of the things we were talking about at our Planetary Health Network meeting this week was, would we like our Department of Family Medicine to have a plant-based food policy? And it's really been interesting to see how it feels like this is an idea whose time has come. So the idea behind this is you don't have to stop all meat, but the idea is you decrease it. It's basically you follow the Canada Food Guide. You decrease your meat, you increase your fruit and vegetables. And this has been identified as one of the 3 climate and health priorities for Canada by the CMA. They've said that consumption of red meat and dairy in particular has been associated with 14,000 deaths in 2021 alone. So what are the implications for family physicians? Well, we're 50% of the medical workforce in Canada, and we are going to be on the front line of dealing with the health effects of climate change in our patients, whether we want to think about it or not. It has started, and it will increase. But the good news is family physicians deal with complexity every day. And Sarah Fraser, who's one of the editors at the Canadian Family Physician last year, wrote a lovely editorial about complexity in family physicians and said, look, we're balancing routine and non-routine, giving care for simple and complex, and remaining capable in the face of uncertainty and ambiguity. So, when you're looking at a patient and you're trying to think of the best treatment and you're thinking of all the influences that are impacting on this person, and you put it all together, often in a kind of intuitive way, and say, okay, this is the best treatment for this patient. That's complexity. So we're actually better placed than specialists to work in a complexity context. Okay, so just to summarize next steps and conclusion, if we think about the downsides of climate change on its own, it can be depressing. You have this feeling like, oh my God, we're done. But planetary health is transformative because it sees that sustainability is possible, and it motivates us to deal with climate change. Climate change on its own feels like a long list on top of everything else, and instant fatigue can start to set in. But by understanding the interactions and influences within and between those 3 ecosystems of the human body and communities and the planet, their opportunities arise for synergies, and then things can actually move very quickly. Climate change on its own, it feels unrealistic for family physicians to learn a whole new area of expertise on top of everything else. But in fact, family physicians are already the experts in providing care in the midst of complexity. So we are best placed to work in this area. Think about those orange fruits. And then start the conversations. Put a poster up of the Canadian Food Guide to begin the conversation. So you'll see here, there is a little bit of meat, but half the plate is fruit and vegetables. And or put up this on Planetary Health and the good news about those double wins. Just want to highlight again the Planetary Health Network. There's now a group of keen, interesting family physicians and residents who want to do something. in climate change preparedness and planetary health. We like to compare notes, brainstorm, help each other, think about where we want to be in the future. So you've heard a bit about the curriculum development. I wish I actually had a real picture of the group. I think we'll have to do that next time. But research, QI, program development, policy development, advocacy, and more. So consider joining us. And in conclusion, why is there a growing interest in planetary health? Planetary health gives us tools, smart strategies, and new hope that we can deal with climate change. Through understanding how people, communities, and the planet interact, let's leverage the opportunities that planetary health reveals. Thank you very much.
Trish, thank you. That was a great presentation. And thanks for introducing complexity theory. It's a theory that I've always felt is extremely relevant, not only for environmental issues, but of course for primary care as well. The whole notion that we have multiple ecosystems and that any change that's made, there's so many interrelated, interdependent variables that make a difference. So it's a great theory to incorporate, whether we're talking about education or whether we're talking about primary care. Then just another note around the ethical investing. If anybody is with MD management, and you take a look at that fund, you'll see that it does well, you know, it performs as well or even outperforms many others. And because of the demand, many organizations have these ethical funds that really do make a difference. So do take a look. All right, I'll open the floor. Questions?
Hey. Please tell me your thoughts. What do you think?
I thought it was super inspiring. Thank you, Trish.
Okay.
I really liked how you talked about the co-benefits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's more of them, right? Like we just, and that's what I like about planetary health. It kind of challenges us to think beyond the box, right? Okay, so how could we use this?
Yeah, good point. Taunia.
Yeah, thank you, Trish. I find it refreshing. Often those of us trying to do small actions to make a difference lose sight of the big picture. And so these types of talks, I think, are really a reminder of why it's important and to be hopeful and not be sort of doom and gloom all the time. And I think that's why you're in the right position as sort of leading this network, so that you can have the big picture and help those who want to do small actions get in the right direction.
Thank you, Taunia. We need it all, right? Because even the small steps, they can give energy, right? When you see things coming together and moving forward, and yeah, it's very important work that you guys are doing because you're creating the physicians of tomorrow, and to embed planetary health in their DNA during training is invaluable. The other thing I think that's wonderful about it is that, you know, all the connections you make with people in this process. And, you know, I was thinking that it was through the Sustainable Physicians Group and Barry, where I learned that Queens has this plant-based food policy now. And I thought, oh, we've already got someone who's got a food policy. Maybe we could just you know, adapt that for here. And so anyway, we'll see how that goes. But and then Laura and I, we saw a great talk by the director at the University of Calgary, Sonia Wicklum, and, and all these, seeing what other people is doing is an inspiration as well. And that, gives energy and momentum, which I think is just so important.
Well, Trish, thanks so much. And big thanks to Laura, and Taunia for your presentation as well. As we draw to a conclusion here, I just want to remind people to fill in the evaluations for today. Our presenters always appreciate feedback, and we do for accreditation as well. I've also put in an invitation to participate in a survey. It's a public health survey around vaccination for older adults. So if you're interested, take a look at that, and then you just consent and participate. Also, our last grand rounds of the year will be for June will be on the 26th, and David Ponca is going to be our presenter. So with that note, thank you all very much for attending to Grand Rounds. This is a great session, and I look forward to seeing you all in June.